The past few weeks have been mostly quiet across the US as far as weather goes, but a major weather pattern flip is about to happen between now and Halloween that will change everything. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what to expect as we go through this transition before Halloween, during Halloween, and I'm even going to tell you the very interesting details about what may happen after Halloween. And it all starts with this little blue blob down here off the west coast of Mexico. This is actually a hurricane in the East Pacific Ocean. Hurricane Norma is currently a Category 3 as of filming this, but it's expected to slightly weaken on its approach to the Baja California Peninsula. By 12 a.m. Tuesday, this is going to be a tropical depression in northwest Mexico, and some of the moisture will already be spilling into parts of Texas. But I'm expecting a lot more than just some tropical spillage as a result of this storm. You see, this is the pattern that we've been in. Colder and wetter air in the east and warm air in the west, and that makes things mostly quiet and dry in the central US. But this little blue blob is going to try and change that as another trough comes sweeping in from the west, absorbing all of its energy and slinging it into the states. As this brand new cutoff low sits over the southwestern US, the cold air aloft will begin to interact with the warmer air out east, leading to thunderstorms. And this is going to set up a channel or a river of moisture from the Pacific Ocean that will outlet over the central US. So all that moisture and energy from Hurricane Norma, plus some, will just be pouring out into the plains towards the middle of next week. And this is mostly a good thing because it looks like some real drought relief might be on the way for some of you guys out there. But don't get me wrong, this won't single-handedly end the drought. It's just going to be quite helpful, especially in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and maybe even all the way up into Iowa, where that river of moisture will be setting up. This is going to bring some rain to Louisiana and Mississippi, but unfortunately not nearly as much as you guys need, because if you keep an eye on this dip in the jet stream, it basically becomes a cutoff low, and it's just going to get stuck down here for a while, keeping all the rain farther west. And here's what that's going to look like as we go from Monday into Tuesday. A large area of rain will be present through the central US, but the heaviest precipitation is going to be down here in Texas and Oklahoma. And then by Wednesday, and especially into Thursday, the heaviest axis of rain will have moved to the west. But you can see how all this moisture is still traveling up the central US, and it's actually compiling around a new storm in the north that's also going to lead to some very heavy rain up here around the Great Lakes. And by the time this is all said and done, you can see that the latest GFS model paints the most intense swath of rain from Texas up through Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. One of the sweet spots is going to be down here towards Dallas, where some places could potentially pick up nearly 10 inches of rain next week. But remember, this is still a few days out, so the heaviest axis of rain and where these sweet spots set up is going to change as we get closer. But just take a look at what happens after that. As we get into next weekend, the system is finally going to start moving, and it's going to sweep a line of showers across the entirety of the eastern US. These rain showers are going to be very light, unless you live in the northeast where a few pockets of heavier rain might set in. And after that front goes by, some cold air is going to settle into the northern US, setting the stage for some snow on the backside. That's right, you heard me right, snow. As we approach Halloween, we might be talking about some real snow out here in the north central US and maybe even into the northeast. Now, Halloween is still about a week away, so it's really hard to do a fine-tuned forecast this far out. But you know me, I'm not holding back, and here is my preliminary Halloween forecast for the entire USA. Starting over here in the west, where up north it's going to be very cold and wet, and then down south it's going to be quite warm. Everyone in the middle there is going to experience fairly normal weather for Halloween during this time of year, or you're going to be on the less prominent side of whichever color zone you are closest to. In the central US, most of us are going to be very warm, but the farther north you go, the better chance you've got of having a somewhat cold Halloween. And then over here on the East Coast, I think we're going to be dealing with yet another trough around this time, so many of us will have a chance of rain. And of course, farther north, we're going to have some cold air hanging around that's going to make things quite cold and dreary. Now, when I say cold and dreary, I'm not talking about like a washout rainstorm or a snowstorm or anything like that, somewhere in between. Think of something like a damp, foggy, misty, nasty day. But hey, it is Halloween, so that's fitting. And looking at this forecast map as a whole, whole really tells the story of how tame this Halloween will be. In fact, this is one of the more quiet Halloween forecasts we've had in quite some time. But it's what may happen after Halloween that's really spooky. It looks like there's going to be a major pattern flip as we go into November, and this is when I think things are going to get really interesting. In fact, it looks like fall tornado season might be a real concern on the horizon. And believe me, we are going to dive deep into that subject right here in a second. But first, let's take a moment to really make sure we're all prepared for the upcoming severe weather by shouting out today's sponsor, Radar Omega, the best weather app on the market. I know you've heard me talk about Radar Omega before, but this is a special update because they've got a brand new version that just blows everything else out of the water. Even before this brand new version 5.2 of Radar Omega, it was already the most capable and customizable weather app on the market. But now it's even better with all kinds of new features like having the ability to track hurricane hunters within the app. And you can now even look at the CPC outlooks for precipitation and temperature in there. And for alpha subscribers, we finally have the ability to look at volumetric radar data. And this shows you in real time high-res volumetric views of storms as they are happening. Radar Omega is the radar app that I choose to use on a day-to-day basis just as somebody who's trying to see what's happening with that storm over there. But it's also the same exact app that I use live in front of millions of people during some of America's worst weather events. Radar Omega has the capability of the $100,000 programs you see local TV meteorologists using, and you can have it on your phone for less than $10. So go ahead and click that link in the top of the description and get Radar Omega today. You can get it on iOS or Android. I've got both links right there for you, and I promise you, you won't regret it. So after Halloween, the pattern's going to go from this to this. A literal 180-degree flip-flop with cold air infiltrating the western US and warm air returning to the east. In my opinion, if this actually comes to fruition, this is going to be the beginning of what we call the fall tornado season. You see, having all this cold air in the west will allow for storm systems to carry some of it into the warmer air out east, especially in the plains in the southeastern US. This interaction of cold air pressing up against warm air will be a catalyst for some big-time storms and potentially even some tornadoes. And this is not me just grasping for straws trying to find something to talk about in my YouTube video. This is a real thing. It happens every year. Based off of climatological data, this is where we usually have to look out for tornadoes in October. It does look to me like this October will likely be less active than our climatologically average October, so thankfully this map is not an accurate representation of 2023, but things actually start to ramp up a bit in November with an emphasis over the south central US. And then even in December, tornadoes can be expected throughout a huge chunk of the states. I mean, just a few years ago, one of the most memorable tornadoes of the last decade happened in December in Kentucky. So this is just another reminder to not be scared, but rather be prepared. Tornadoes can and will happen in the fall, so make sure you have some way of getting warnings and you know what you're going to do when that warning comes through. Hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you always stay ahead of the storm. And of course, whenever that next big severe weather event comes or the next big blizzard, we will be live right here on YouTube for 10, 12, 13 hours straight, relaying warnings and showing you what's happening on the ground in real time. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye. Ooh.